Hey, hi, I'm Chris. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. This is part of my 1000 day vlog. Yep, for 1000 days I'll be vlogging, and it's so nice to have you here. So thank you so much. If you're not subscribed, a subscribe would be really good, and I'd really appreciate that. Bit of a serious one today though. Apparently 1 in 2 people in the United Kingdom, where I live, will get cancer. And apparently 1 in 5 globally will get the disease. Yeah, it's such a tragedy, isn't it? But you may or may not know, previously in my vlogs way back, I did a lovely story about my brother. And I just want to talk about him today, because I think it's just really important to, I just don't want his memory to be lost in time. I really don't. He lived such a short life, 10 years. And it's so important that people know of him. And, you know, I just hate the fact that nobody knows of him. His name was David. And yes, he did lose his battle with cancer. And it was awful. And, you know, so if this story touches somebody today, if it impacts on you today, then you know, please let me know in the comments. And, yeah, so look, always whenever I'm faced with a bad situation, I try and take something positive or good from it. But I'll talk about that in a minute. But I really want to talk about David, because I just think it's so important. The year was 1976. In the UK, at least. I don't know what it was like around the rest of the world, but it was so hot. It was really warm. And it was just a time when, I was 8 years old. I was the youngest of 9. We all lived in a big house. It was just like the Waltons on TV. It really was, if you remember that show. Some people watching this may not remember it, but I'm old enough now to be able to talk about it and say about it. And it was lovely. And as the youngest of that family, I looked up to every single one of them. Living in that family was a gift from God. It truly was. And, you know, so the next brothers, if you like, up from me, were twins, Peter and David. So David, sadly, got diagnosed with leukemia, with cancer. And in 1976, the knowledge of how to treat that, I guess, wasn't what it is today. And I look at him as being a trailblazer for hopefully saving lives in the future from that point. But it was a horrible summer because it was so hot, but also because my brother was so very, very poorly in hospital here in Plymouth. And it was a real tragedy for him, the family, for everybody connected to it. My mum, my dad. It was horrible, but he was in and out of hospital so many times. And, you know, the times that we had him home, you know, it was a joy to have him, but he was so poorly. He was so ill and so sick. And that was just, I don't know, just so hard on the family and so hard on him, you know. I remember one particular incident that I went up to the hospital to visit him, and he was very poorly in bed. And my brother, Peter, who was his twin, David's twin, was playing with my younger sister. And my mum was there, sat in the corner of this cubicle, just doing some knitting. And David, really, at that age for me, was my closest confidant, my friend, and my best buddy. And at the time in the cinemas was Planet of the Apes, and he loved Planet of the Apes. And for some strange reason, I do too. I always go and watch the movies, you know. I always go to the cinema. I always do that. And yeah, it became apparent that he was very, very ill. But he said to me in that cubicle, my mum said, "Come on, you lot, you've got to go now. Leave David to rest." And I can still hear his voice, you know, where he said, no, mum, let Christopher stay." And, you know, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget his voice saying that to me. It was so powerful. And yeah, I think that was probably one of the last times that I saw him alive. And on this particular day in August, my my brother Pete and my sister Nikki, we were in the back room, and we had this side drain to the house. Now, if anybody stepped on the side drain, it made an awful sound. Everybody in the family knew to avoid it. And so we knew always a stranger was approaching the house because they would just step on it and it would make this awful sound. But my dad on this particular day stepped on it, and I was just overcome with this instant fear, you know. It was horrible. And then shortly after, within seconds, my mum screaming because my dad was passing on the very, very bad and sad news that David had died. And from then on, you know, it was all we could do was to hold on as a family, I think, really. I know it affected every single one of my brothers and sisters. It still hurts today. You know, cancer. It's just awful. Really is, you know. It's taken so many, many good people. And, you know, when you understand that, when you see what devastation it leaves. So, yeah, we had my brother home for 5 days, and I'll never forget that. You know, it was important that we all said our goodbyes to him. I saw him lying there in state, if you like, in our what was our best front room. And yeah, it was just so horrible to see. And I never really shared this with anyone, but the fear that I had is that, you know, I could go at any time. So I think for me, I tried to make the most of my life and started traveling, because he never had that luxury of being able to travel, you know. He never had that luxury of being able to get on a plane and go somewhere, you know, and experience things. You know, he's robbed of his life, absolutely robbed of his life. And that, for me, was, you know, just something that I've never lost, you know. I always took that and I always sort of held on to that. So whenever, I mean, my inspiration for traveling was really that, because I always felt like I never knew when I could go. I never knew when, you know, if for some reason I'd be struck down and not live a life, you know, because he was robbed of life. And I know that sounds incredibly silly, but it's true, absolutely true, you know. But he was robbed of that, and, you know, so we had him home for 5 days, and then the funeral came round, and we ended up, you know, burying him here in Plymouth. And I know the impact of that was felt greatly between everybody in the family. So it wasn't just me, it was everybody. And I think kids are resilient, you know. You bounce back from things, you just sort of get used to things after a while. But I never forgot him. You know, every day I always thought, well, maybe, you know, if I just carry a bit of him in my heart and in my soul, then that's not a bad thing, you know. It's good. I've always felt really that life is short for a lot of people. And hang on, just going to see that. I've always felt really that life is short for an awful lot of people. And, you know, for David it was incredibly short. 10 years old, that's all he was. It's funny, you know, I look back on some of the stories, some of the things that as a kid that I did with David, and one I really regret was the fact that we had these tiny little sweets called Smarties here in the UK. I don't know if they have them around the world where you are, but they're little colourful sweets. They almost look like tablets, and I was pretending to be ill, and David would feed me these chocolate Smarties to make me feel better, and I was only doing it because I wanted to eat some chocolate, you know. It's crazy, isn't it? I've never shared that story with anyone, but yeah, it's funny how, you know, you look back on these sort of things. So David passed away, we had his funeral, and then I know it left a hole in my mum's heart. It would do. No parent should see, you know, the end of of their child. They shouldn't see it. It's something that's so wrong. And of course, you know, I'm sure it affected my dad as well, you know, the impact of that, you know, was kept very much, I think, away from us as children. And dealing with it, coming together and trying to understand it, it's not an easy prospect. And it affects, like I say, so many people. 1 in 5 globally. 1 in 5. So that's an awful lot of people, isn't it? And yeah, so most people have a front row seat to this awful thing. They really do. And getting your head around it and processing it, and you know, it's dealing with the loss of it. You know, cancer is a terrible, terrible thing. It really is. And I just wanted to share that story because later on I posted a video about artificial intelligence and how I had this photograph of David. I never had any video of him because video in the 70s wasn't widely used, and I felt it was important to sort of have something of him. I managed to find some software and I ran a photograph through the software, and I'll post the video just here. And this is my brother David, smiling, and this is exactly as how I knew him. And it had so much impact when I saw that. To see somebody move, be alive, blink, smile, when the only sort of movement or recognition of them is when you were a child, you know. So artificial intelligence, for that alone, is incredible. And seeing his face move, I just felt the essence of him. It's so difficult, isn't it, life, when you deal with people who die of cancer? It's so horrible. But if you can use something like artificial intelligence to bring them back and have an impact in your life. And I don't ever want to forget him. He doesn't deserve to be forgotten. He just doesn't, you know. And I know probably some of my family members may have a look at this video. But I want them to know it comes from a place of fondness, from a place of not ever, as long as I breathe, ever forgetting about him. Because, you know, although it was a long time ago, I just really feel that it's so important to, you know, to let people know that he was alive, that he did live, that he did have a purpose, and that, you know, his impact on me, I'd like to think, was felt by many other people from all over the world and the places that I've travelled. Because I just feel that, yeah, you know, his life, although cut short, did have an impact on so many of us. So, yeah, if this subject matter has touched you today or has had some kind of impact, I'm sorry, and my thoughts are with you. Like I say, 1 in 5 globally, 1 in 2 in the UK, which, you know, 50% of the UK population will be touched by cancer at some point. And that is scary. That is so scary. But, you know, technology has moved on, and, you know, doctors, nurses, the care that we get here in Britain as part of the NHS, I'm so grateful that we have a free National Health Service, because, you know, it's certainly helped me in my time of need. And cancer affects everybody. You know, I think, you know, we should be throwing everything at this to try and save lives. I know that millions of pounds have been donated in the UK over many years, but this story, I hope, resonates with people. I just want to let people know that David, you know, was a person, that he did live, and that it did mean something, that his existence was something important, you know. And yeah, if you like I say, if you've heard this today and resonated with it, then thanks, I appreciate that. And look, I'm going to end it here, but I'm just going to say thanks so much. This is part of my vlog series every day, and I promise tomorrow it'll be a bit lighter, okay? But like I say, I just really wanted to just have David out there, have people know that he did exist and that he was a wonderful person, because he absolutely was. His smile, his laughter, his joy. He wasn't the sum of cancer, you know. He was adventurous, kind, considerate, and very loving. So anyway, look, I'll let you go. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye now.